There are no miracles in this world. Here, even the morning begins with a scream, and the night with someone else's fear. Your job is to find virgins for those who can afford to pay for them. This is no secret, but a routine, unbearably mundane, so familiar that it's impossible to look at it with horror anymore. You are not a monster, not a savior, not a judge. You are just another shadow among thousands just like you. But before you get comfortable, hit the like button under this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. And now, make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake to the sound of rats scrabbling across the rough-hewn beams overhead, their claws scratching like the quills of scribes, recording the endless miseries of the lower city. It is not yet dawn, but the world outside already stirs. There is no gentle sunlight to greet you, only the sharp tang of wood smoke mixed with the sour aroma of human waste. You wonder, for perhaps the thousandth time, whether you were ever truly asleep, or if your existence is simply a dull continuum between restless lying and ceaseless toil. Your bed is a sagging heap of straw, more black than yellow, alive with things that crawl and bite. The single blanket, a greasy, lice-ridden square of something that may once have been wool, does little to hold off the night's damp, but you clutch it anyway, out of habit. You have been sleeping in the same cramped corner of the same hut for so many years that the rough pattern of the wall's mildew stains is as familiar to you as the lines on your own hands. It is a new day, but not a new beginning. The city, with its sagging rooftops and stinking lanes, does not allow new beginnings. Here, each day is a continuation of what came before: poverty, struggle, and the steady erosion of hope. You might imagine that in some nobleman's household, in a distant castle rising above the mist, morning brings songbirds, clean linens, and hot broth. But you know better. For you, and for those with you, there is nothing but mud, labor, and the ever-present threat of hunger. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the brittle remains of your makeshift bed. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, cold and moist, scattered with splinters and bits of broken pottery. You reach for the dented tin cup that serves as your drinking vessel and find it empty, as always. There is no water in the house. The well ran dry 3 days ago, and the river is too far to risk before dawn. You make a note to beg some from the baker's wife later, if she is in a generous mood. Outside, the first cries of the vendors pierce the chill air. You can hear them setting up their stalls, laying out their pitiful wares: a handful of wizened turnips, a few fish stiff with cold, a small clutch of eggs already flecked with dirt. You wonder how many will be left unsold by nightfall, and which children will go to bed hungry as a result. You know these people. You are these people. You are not a noble, nor a priest, nor anyone of importance. Your life is a sequence of tasks and humiliations, punctuated only by the rare relief of laughter or warmth. And yet, You hold a peculiar position in this little ecosystem of desperation. You are a supplier of something both highly valued and utterly despised: virginity. It is an odd sort of profession, if it can be called that. You did not choose it. It chose you, as such things do when a girl is born into poverty and learns quickly how the world works. There is a constant demand in the city and in the castles beyond for fresh faces, for untouched bodies, for symbols of purity that can be purchased, used, and discarded. You are the link in the chain between desperate families and ravenous lords, between mothers who cannot feed another mouth and men who measure their wealth in flesh. Your morning routine is simple but relentless. You rise, you wash. If you are lucky enough to find water, you dress in whatever rags are least offensive to the senses. You tie your hair back with a bit of string and cover your head with a stained kerchief. Your shoes are nothing more than scraps of leather stitched together with twine, barely sufficient to protect your feet from the filth of the streets. Breakfast, if it comes at all, is a stale crust dipped in sour ale. You eat quickly, not savoring the taste. There is nothing to savor. Hunger is an old friend, never quite sated, always lingering just out of sight. You step outside and inhale the morning air, thick with the scents of rot, dung, and wood smoke. The sun is a pale smear behind the clouds, promising nothing. The city sprawls before you, a maze of crooked lanes, sagging houses, and open drains. Somewhere, a child is already crying. Somewhere, a dog snarls over a scrap of bone. Everywhere, there is struggle. You begin your rounds. You must visit 3 households before noon. Families you know, families whose daughters are approaching the age when their innocence becomes a liability rather than a blessing. You have seen it 100 times. A girl blossoms, and her mother's eyes grow sharp with fear. Another mouth to feed, another body to clothe. The church preaches chastity, but hunger preaches louder. So mothers come to you, and you come to them. You walk with your head down, avoiding the gaze of the watchmen who patrol the main street. Their eyes are always searching for weakness, for opportunity. You have learned to pass unnoticed, to become just another shadow among many. Still, you feel the weight of their stares. By the time you reach the first door, your stomach aches with more than hunger. There is a knot of dread inside you, tightening with each step. You tell yourself, this is just business. You tell yourself everyone must survive. But the words are hollow, and the day is long. Inside the cramped hut, a mother and her daughter await you. The girl is perhaps 12, thin and pale, her eyes wide with fear. The mother does not meet your gaze. You know why they have sent for you. You explain, as gently as you can, the process, the inspection, the bargaining, the terms. The mother nods, resigned. The girl begins to cry, quietly, into her hands. You do not cry. You cannot afford to cry. There is no place for tears in this world. You make your notes, exchange a few soft words, and promise to return with news. As you leave, you think of your own mother, long dead, who once told you that a woman's strength is her silence. You move on to the next house and the next, repeating the ritual. Each time it is the same: the hunger, the fear, the resignation. You are not a villain, nor a savior. You are a cog in a machine that grinds the poor to dust. By noon, your work is only just begun. You have names to record, bargains to strike, promises to keep. The city does not rest, and neither can you. As you trudge through the mud, your shoes leaking and your heart numb, you wonder if there is any other life possible, but you know the answer. There is only this: the endless, grinding day, the business of survival, and the knowledge that in a world built on suffering, there is no clean escape. You do not remember a time before hunger. You do not remember a time before cold. There are people, you are told, who live with full bellies and warm fires, but you are not among them and never will be. Your earliest memories are not of love or laughter, but of the ceaseless ache in your belly and the pinching chill in your toes as you curl up at night on a blanket so thin it lets the wind pass through as though it were not there at all. Your family is one of many, indistinguishable from the others who cling to life on the margins of the city. Your father is a stooped figure with cracked hands and haunted eyes, broken by years of toil in fields that yield nothing but stones and bones. Your mother is a voice in the dark, calling you to chores before the sun has risen and hushing your whimpers when you shiver in the night. There are other children, your brothers and sisters, each as thin and hollow eyed as you, sharing every crumb and scrap with the same silent resignation. In this house, laughter is as rare as meat. Each day dawns with the same grim ritual. You rise before the light because work is waiting. There is always work. Even the smallest hands are useful when it comes to collecting dung for fuel or carrying water from the river. You do not attend lessons. There are no lessons here, except those that teach you the value of silence and obedience. You learn early that a loud child draws the wrong sort of attention, and so you keep your eyes down and your voice soft. You witness things no child should see. You watch as your neighbors are carried away by fever, their bodies left for the rats until someone remembers to bury them. You see men beaten for stealing a loaf of bread, and women dragged to the stocks for debts they could never repay. The city is a theater of suffering, and every street a stage where poverty is performed for the amusement of those with the means to avoid it. Some days you think you might be invisible. You are so small, so quiet, that the world hardly notices your existence. But then there are days when you wish you could disappear entirely, especially when your parents look at you not with love, but with calculation. Each mouth is a liability. Each child is another link in the chain that keeps the family weighted down in the mud. Your first lesson in value comes early. It is not the sort of value spoken of by priests or scholars. It is the crude arithmetic of survival. You hear the whispers at night, your parents arguing over which child might be spared another winter. The girls, they agree, have certain advantages. They are worth more in the right hands. The boys, unless strong enough to work, are just another drain on already empty coffers. There is a market for everything in the city, even children, especially children. You see it on market days when families gather in the square not only to barter for onions and cheese, but also to strike quieter bargains in the shadows. You watch as a neighbor, gaunt and desperate, offers her youngest daughter to a passing merchant in exchange for a sack of grain. The deal is struck quickly, almost carelessly. The girl is led away, and no one speaks of her again. You wonder sometimes if your parents will do the same to you. There are days when your mother's gaze lingers on you a little too long, when your father sighs more heavily than usual as he looks over the shrunken remains of his brood. You are careful to be useful, always eager to fetch, to carry, to stay out of the way. You hope that by being quiet and helpful, you might stave off whatever fate awaits the surplus child. But usefulness is only a reprieve, not a reprieve from the inevitable. You learn that every child is a potential commodity, a potential source of relief. The old wives in the neighborhood tell stories about families who sell their children to wandering craftsmen, to traveling musicians, to mysterious women who pay in silver for silence. You do not know what becomes of those children, but you suspect the answer is nothing good. One evening, after a particularly lean week, your father returns with a visitor. She is a woman of indeterminate age, draped in a cloak that hides her face. She speaks in low tones, her words measured and cold. Your mother ushers you and your siblings into the corner, but you hear enough to understand. There is talk of debt, of mouths to feed, of bargains struck in desperation. When the visitor leaves, your parents sit in silence for a long time, the air thick with dread. You lie awake that night, listening to the wind whistling through the cracks in the wall. You wonder if the next dawn will bring freedom or loss. You wonder if you will still be here when the sun rises. Over time, you grow numb to the calculations. You understand that survival is a series of compromises, each one more bitter than the last. You see it everywhere, in the eyes of mothers who barter their daughters for a handful of coins, in the thin smiles of fathers who pretend not to care. You learn that in this world, innocence is not a gift, but a burden, a liability that must be traded before it spoils. As you grow, you become sharper, harder. You watch, you listen, you learn. You see the way women like the visitor move through the city, their eyes always searching, their purses always ready. You see that those who survive are not the kindest or the strongest, but the ones who are willing to do what others cannot bear. You promise yourself that if you are ever faced with the choice, you will do whatever it takes to survive. And so, when the day finally comes that your own mother takes you by the hand and leads you to the edge of the market, you do not cry. You do not beg. You stand straight, head high, and wait for whatever comes next. It is not bravery, not really. It is simply the absence of any other option. You look back at your family, your mother with her hollow eyes, your father turned away, Your siblings clustered together like so many frightened mice. You understand, in that moment, that you are no longer a child. Childhood is a luxury reserved for those who can afford to waste time on dreams. You are a commodity now, just another item on the ledger, another number in the endless arithmetic of survival. As the visitor, your future self, though you do not yet know it, approaches to claim you. You wonder if this is the worst that life can offer. You will soon discover, of course, that there is always something worse waiting just around the corner. But for now, you keep your eyes open, your voice steady, and your heart as cold as the morning air. This is how girls survive in your world. This is how you survived. There are markets in your city for everything. A man with enough patience and enough filth under his nails can find what he wants by asking the right question in the right gutter. Bread, eels, wool, a cracked bronze bell, a daughter, a son, a secret, everything has its price. The stalls open before dawn and close when the last coin has been pried from the cold hands of a customer or the last sliver of light has faded behind the city's leaning walls. You learn quickly that children are not sold in the open, not officially. The law frowns on it, though the law, like a tired old dog, is easily distracted by the promise of a bone or a bit of meat. If you walk through the market with sharp eyes, you will see the signs. A mother stands a little apart, clutching the arm of a girl just past childhood, her hair combed and her face scrubbed until her cheeks shine red against her pale skin. A father hovers near the tanners, watching passers-by with the same look a fisherman gives his empty net, hoping for a bite. There are gestures that mean everything. A kerchief knotted a certain way, a loaf of bread broken in half and offered with the crust facing out, a glance, a nod. The transaction is as old as the city itself and as silent. You are not meant to see it, but you do, because you have become a student of need. You see everything, because seeing means surviving. Some children go quickly. There are buyers who seek sturdy boys to work in the stables, girls to scrub floors or carry water until their backs bend and their hands bleed. There is no shame in this. It is work, and work means food. The boys might come back someday, bent but breathing, perhaps with a coin or two for their mothers. The girls might come back too, but usually they do not. Then there are the other buyers, the ones with clean boots and hungry eyes, the ones who never look at the mothers or the fathers, only at the children. They do not haggle over price because their coins are many and their patience is thin. Their requirements are precise. Youth, beauty, obedience, these are the qualities that fetch the highest price. Virgins, especially, are valuable. In your city, purity is a currency all its own, spent only once and at a terrible cost. You see it happen again and again. A mother leads her daughter to the edge of the market and waits. The girl's dress is patched and faded, but clean. Her hair is plaited, her hands scrubbed raw. She does not speak. She stands with her eyes on the ground. shivering in the thin dawn air, pretending not to hear the whispered negotiations behind her back. She has been told to be quiet, to be good, to do whatever the lady says. She does not yet know what that means. The buyer arrives, a woman, always a woman. Men are too obvious, too risky. The woman smiles with her mouth, but not her eyes. She asks the mother how many children she has, how much she needs to eat this winter, whether the girl is a hard worker. The mother nods, her voice shaking with hope and shame. They do not discuss the details, not aloud. They do not need to. The rules are understood. A purse is produced, coins are counted. The mother takes the money and tries not to look at her daughter as the woman leads her away. The girl looks back only once. Then she is gone, and her place at the table is filled with silence. You remember your own sale, how your mother wept afterwards, though not for long. There were other mouths to feed. Grief is a luxury, like fresh bread or a second blanket. The market takes children, but it does not leave room for sorrow. The memory is always with you, lurking behind your eyes as you make your rounds in the market years later. Now you are the one who speaks to the mothers, who judges the children with an expert eye, who bargains over youth and innocence as though they were so many turnips or onions. You do not relish this role, but you play it well. To show weakness is to invite ruin. You try, sometimes, to choose the kindest words, the softest tone. You explain the rules, the expectations, the dangers, though you know your honesty is both a cruelty and a mercy. Most of the women thank you, their gratitude hollow and cold. They tell you they have no choice, that it is better than starving, that it is what everyone does. You nod because you know it is true. The city is indifferent to these small tragedies. Life goes on. The market is swept, the refuse cleared away, the stalls rebuilt after every fire or flood. The men who rule the city, lords, bishops, merchants, speak of progress and providence while their tables groan with stolen plenty. The poor sell what they can, take what they are given, and vanish quietly when there is nothing left. There is an unspoken understanding that this trade in children is necessary. The city depends on it, though it will never admit as much. The rich need servants, the brothels need new blood. The rituals of power and purity require a steady supply of innocence. Someone must provide it. Someone must facilitate the transactions, keep the wheels turning, ensure that no one looks too closely at the cost. You become adept at moving through this world. You walk the narrow alleys and crowded squares with practiced caution, eyes always down, but ears always open. You learn which mothers are most desperate, which girls are most valuable, which buyers can be trusted to pay and not complain. You keep careful records, though you never write anything down. Everything is stored in your head, behind a wall of silence and forgetfulness. You learn to spot the signs of a girl about to be sold. The sudden neatness of her dress, the way her hair is brushed and her face wiped clean, the nervous fidgeting of her hands. You see the way her mother clings to her half afraid to let go, half desperate to be rid of her. You see the way buyers appraise her, like a butcher weighing a side of beef. Sometimes a girl will cry, sometimes she will plead, sometimes she will go quietly, her eyes dry and empty. You have learned not to feel too much. Feeling too much is a weakness, and there is no place for weakness in your line of work. You comfort yourself with the thought that you are only a messenger, only a broker. You do not set the prices. You do not make the rules. If you did not do this work, someone else would. The market is always hungry, and someone must feed it. And so you move through the days, part of the machinery of need and scarcity. You wake, you walk, you bargain, you sell. You do what is required to survive. You tell yourself over and over that this is just the way things are. You wonder if you believe it. You suspect that in time, you will forget episode how to wonder at all. If you ever wondered why your profession persists, why the market for untouched girls never seems to dry up, you need only look at the faces of the men who seek your wares. They are not always the obvious villains of bedtime tales, not always leering with rotten teeth and coarse laughter. Sometimes they are priests, sometimes merchants, sometimes bored young lords with silken gloves and perfume in their hair. They come to you quietly, usually through intermediaries, always expecting discretion. But the hunger in their eyes is unmistakable, even when masked behind the veil of custom. For them, virginity is not just a fetish, it is a superstition, a ritual, a twisted symbol of power, luck, and entitlement. The stories passed from one generation to the next are thick with warnings. If a lord's bloodline is to remain pure, he must wed a maiden untouched by man or moon. If a merchant's fortunes falter, he may restore his luck by taking a young girl in a secret ceremony before the dawn. If a plague sweeps through the city, the priests whisper that it is because the innocence of the land has been polluted and must be cleansed with the blood of a virgin. You are not sure when these ideas began, nor do you care. What matters is that men believe them, and belief shapes the world more than any sword or coin. The city's underbelly is crisscrossed with tales, half fear, half hope, that a man's health, virility, even his crops and livestock, can be revived with a single act of cruelty dressed up as necessity. There are times when a man will look you in the eye and ask, in a voice thick with desperation, whether you can guarantee purity. You have learned to answer such questions with a nod and a careful lie. The rituals vary, as do the men. Some are crude and brutal, barely hiding their intentions. They come with their coin, their hunger, their impatience. Others dress up their appetite in the trappings of faith. They speak of cleansing, of sacrifice, of the sacred duty to preserve innocence by destroying it. You have watched with cold amusement as holy men pray over girls they are about to ruin, invoking the protection of saints while committing acts that saints would surely abhor. There are rules, of course, but they are written in air, enforced only by fear and secrecy. The higher the price, the more elaborate the ceremony. Sometimes a girl is dressed in white and paraded through a candlelit room before being taken away. Sometimes she is blindfolded, bathed, and scented with flowers, as if her terror might be lessened by the sweet smell of rose water. Once you witnessed a nobleman insist that his chosen virgin recite prayers while he watched to assure himself of her purity. The logic is as twisted as the rituals themselves. For you, it is business. You do not flinch when the requests come. You have learned that a straight back and a blank face serve you better than pity or outrage. If you are lucky, you can persuade the buyer that a slightly older girl will do just as well as a child. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you do not. You are rarely thanked for your efforts. The girls, of course, have no say in the matter. Some do not understand what is being asked of them until it is far too late. Others guess the truth from the way their mothers weep or the way you avoid their eyes. Occasionally, a mother will beg you for mercy, will plead for her daughter to be spared. You are always kind in your refusals. There is no mercy here. The world is too hungry, the men too powerful, the need too old. You are often asked to vouch for the innocence of your wares. There are women who serve as unofficial inspectors, midwives, wise women, crones who have seen too much and been paid too little. They conduct their examinations in dank corners, checking for the so called signs of purity. Never mind that such signs are as changeable as the wind and as easily faked as a beggar's limp. The men do not care for truth. They want assurance, and you sell it, just as you sell everything else. You wonder sometimes what it is these men really seek. Is it the power, the thrill of possession, the childish fantasy that purity can be bought and used up and replaced at will? Is it fear of death, a belief that youth can stave off rot and age? Is it simple cruelty dressed up as tradition? You have seen every kind, the sweating, shaking men who can barely meet your gaze, the cool, elegant lords who make you feel unclean just by standing in their shadow, the fat, red faced merchants who bargain as if they were buying livestock. Some are monsters, some are simply men shaped by a monstrous world. You learn quickly to ignore the stories. You do not care if a drought ends after a girl is given to the river god, or if a nobleman's sickly heir recovers after sharing the bed with a village child. You do not believe in curses or blessings. You believe in coin and in the simple fact that hunger trumps everything else. You are not alone in this trade. There are others like you, some softer, some harder, some who drink themselves blind every night to forget what they have seen. You do not drink, not anymore. You need your wits about you. There are too many dangers in the city for a woman who cannot walk straight or see through a lie. You take pride in your reputation for reliability, if not for kindness. There are risks, always. A deal gone wrong, a buyer who refuses to pay, a family who changes their mind at the last moment. There are times when the city watch grows curious, when a scandal threatens to break through the thick skin of indifference that protects the powerful. When that happens, you disappear for a week or a month, leaving your rivals to absorb the fallout. The business never stops, only shifts. You sometimes wonder how many girls you have delivered into the hands of men who believe that blood and pain will grant them power. Too many to count. You tell yourself it is just a job, that you are only a part of the machinery. You tell yourself you are no worse than the baker who sells stale bread or the apothecary who waters his medicine. But you know, deep down, that your trade is darker, your bargains more permanent. And so the cycle continues, year after year, season after season. Men come with their coins and their hungers. Mothers come with their daughters and their fears. You stand in between, the invisible hand that smooths the way, makes the introductions, keeps the secrets. If you sometimes wish for a different life, you keep those wishes locked away, far from the market's reach. There is no room for regret here, only survival, only the endless, grinding business of other people's innocence. You never truly leave the market, even when your feet carry you through the quieter lanes or down to the river's edge. The city itself is a market, every stone and shadow marked with the endless haggling of survival. But the trade in girls, young, clean, unspoiled, and always afraid, runs through the heart of it all, pulsing like a hidden artery. The market is not a place of banners and music. It is not a place for celebration. It is more like a wound that never heals. Here, you learn to move quietly, speaking in half words and gestures. Here, you are a necessary evil, though no one would ever say so aloud. Each day begins with a review of your inventory. That word, inventory, still bothers you some mornings, but you have no better name for what you do. You keep a careful mental list of the girls whose families have come to you, each name accompanied by a brief record: age, health, hair color, temperament, whether they still cry for their mothers at night, whether they have already learned to keep silent. You think of them as numbers, as notes in a ledger, because to do otherwise would risk your own sanity. Your clients rarely care for details beyond the obvious. They want beauty, certainly, but above all, they want freshness, innocence, the sense that they are the first to reach into a sealed jar, the first to break the wax and taste what is inside. There is always another man, always another ritual, always another story about the power of untouched flesh. You take notes on their preferences, their taboos, their little superstitions. Some want a girl who can read a prayer, some do not want her to speak at all. You have learned to recognize the different kinds of buyers at a glance. The city is full of them, moving in and out of the shadows. There are the urgent ones who cannot meet your eyes and keep their hoods pulled low. There are the wealthy and jaded who appraise the goods with a cold detachment, never once acknowledging the girls as human. There are the priests who come not for themselves, but for the good of some lord or merchant, their sanctimoniousness like a cloak against guilt. The negotiations are rarely simple. There is haggling, sometimes to the point of violence. You have seen a mother spit in the dust and curse a man's ancestors for offering too little for her daughter's future. You have seen a father raise his fist in threat, his fear of losing another mouth overwhelmed only by his fear of not gaining enough coin. Sometimes you must act as mediator, soothing both parties with practiced platitudes and empty assurances. For the girls, the market is a waiting room, a silent purgatory. They sit together on benches or low stools, not daring to speak above a whisper. Some clutch dolls or bits of ribbon, tokens from home that will soon be lost. Others stare into space, their faces set in expressions far too old for their years. They watch you with something like hope, and you try not to meet their eyes. The process is always the same. A buyer arrives. You greet him or her on rare occasions, and the viewing begins. Sometimes the girls are lined up, sometimes brought out one by one. The buyers inspect them as though choosing fruit, turning their faces to the light, asking them to open their mouths, examining hands, feet, hair. Sometimes there is talk of testing, of finding a midwife to confirm purity, though everyone knows such tests are more theater than truth. If a girl is chosen, the transaction is completed with as much dignity as you can muster. The money changes hands. The mother, if present, tries not to weep. The father stands back, arms folded, face carved from wood. You say something soft, something gentle, because cruelty serves no one in this moment. The girl leaves with the buyer, her fate sealed. If a girl is not chosen, she returns to her place among the others. Sometimes this is a relief, sometimes a deeper kind of misery. You know which girls will come back next week, thinner and more desperate, their price reduced by time and circumstance. You have watched as hope slowly drains out of them, replaced by something harder, something colder. Sometimes they run away, only to return in rags, begging to be considered for sale once more. The market does not forget its debts. You have your own rituals, of course. You keep your hands clean as much as you can. You change your kerchief, polish your shoes, tidy your hair, anything to separate yourself, however briefly, from the grime that clings to this trade. You tell yourself you are providing a service, that without you, things would be worse. You try to believe it. The market is full of lies, but this is the one you need most. There are moments when you catch glimpses of other lives. You see a noble woman passing in her carriage, her face a mask of indifference as she looks down on the crowd. You see young men laughing and shoving each other, oblivious to the misery all around. You see children playing with scraps of wood, inventing games out of nothing, not yet aware of the fate that waits for so many of them. Sometimes you wish you could hate these people. More often, you simply feel tired. At the end of each day, you settle accounts. You remember every coin, every name, every promise made and broken. You know which families are at their limit, which girls are most likely to fetch a good price next week, which buyers must be avoided because their reputation is even darker than yours. You go home exhausted, not from the walking or the talking, but from the weight of secrets carried through the filthy streets. You have learned never to speak of your work. The city gossips, but it does not gossip about you. You are invisible, a shadow slipping between the cracks. This is your power and your curse. You keep to yourself, eat your bread, count your coins, sleep badly, dream worse. Some nights you wonder if you could simply leave, walk into the forest, vanish into another city, become someone else. But you know there is no place for you elsewhere. The market is in your blood now, and you are in its debt. The city sleeps uneasily. Somewhere, a mother cries into her pillow. Somewhere, a man counts his blessings, believing he has bought himself another year of luck. Somewhere, a girl learns, in the darkest way, that her childhood is over. You listen to the sounds of rats in the roof, the creak of old beams, the distant shout of a drunken watchman, and you realize you are right where you belong. The market will open again tomorrow, and you will be there, as always, making the world turn, one transaction at a time. You become a creature of habit, but your habits are not those of a respectable tradeswoman. Your routines are stitched from shadows and silences. The city has many faces, and by now you know most of them, at least the faces shown to you. You also know the masks people wear and the way secrets rot behind the smiles. It is not only you who must keep secrets. Everyone who moves through the world of buying and selling innocence is trapped by their own lies. The mothers who bring their daughters to you speak in whispers, eyes darting left and right, as though the stones themselves might judge them. It is only for a little while, they say. She will be better off, you will see. They do not believe it, not really, but they repeat it until the words are as worn as their shoes. The buyers, too, are masters of deception. There is a language for all this, a code passed through a glance or a hand on a shoulder. In public, the men who crave purity keep their heads high, their cloaks rich, their words pious. You know which ones have come to you in the dark, pressing silver into your palm, making demands that would curdle the blood of their wives. Their secrets are your safety net and your curse. There are places in the city where the walls themselves seem to lean in, eager to overhear. The inn near the old bridge, the back room behind the baker's shop, the cellar of the midwife's cottage, all are meeting places for those with secrets to keep. You step softly in these spaces, careful never to be seen twice in the same place within a fortnight. Still, you cannot avoid the risk. It is like a worm in the fruit, unseen until it is too late. You learn to trust no one. Rival suppliers linger in every alley, women with faces as sharp as broken glass, all watching for the chance to steal a deal or ruin your reputation. Some spread rumors that your girls are sick, that you cheat the scales, that you are too close to the city watch. You respond with silence, letting your own reputation float above the mud, silent but unshakable. In this business, words are weapons, but silence is armor. And then there are the girls themselves. They keep their own secrets, sometimes from you, often from their families. Some are already marked, touched by someone in the night, or sold once before and returned when their value was gone. There are ways to hide the truth, ways to create the appearance of purity with herbs, stitches, prayers, and lies. You know the midwives who will vouch for a girl for a fee. The buyers rarely want to know more than what they are told. The illusion is enough. Your part in all this is simple, though not easy. You are the quiet hand that guides the transaction, the face that never betrays the real price of what is being sold. You see the desperation in the eyes of mothers, the hunger in the faces of buyers, the numbness in the girls. You do not flinch. The world has left no space in you for revulsion, only for calculation. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of the city's respectable world, an altar being scrubbed by candlelight, a wedding procession drifting by with laughter and garlands, a parade of officials in polished armor. They speak of virtue, of honor, of the purity of their city. You watch from the edge of the crowd, and you think of the transactions that paid for the feast, the daughters sold so a brother could become an apprentice, the gold exchanged for a veil of innocence. There are moments when you must clean up after others. A buyer who changes his mind at the last moment, leaving a girl in your care with nowhere to go. A rival who tries to poison your name with the city watch. A mother who swears she never consented, though you remember her trembling signature on a scrap of parchment. You have learned to keep your own records, not on paper, but in your mind, where no one can steal them. If need be, you can call upon a debt, threaten a secret, remind someone gently that their own survival depends on yours. This world is a tangled net. No one is entirely innocent, no matter how loudly they protest. Even those who only hear rumors, who turn away, close their doors, busy themselves with prayers, are part of the machine. Their silence is the oil that keeps the gears running. There are times, rare but memorable, when a girl escapes. She vanishes into the alleys, running from what awaits her. Sometimes she makes it out, disappearing into another city, taking a new name. Sometimes she is caught and brought back, shamed and reduced in value, but more often simply broken. You have seen the city's shadows swallow up hope like a starving dog. And yet, in all this, the trade never stops. A flood might drown a quarter of the city, or a plague might empty the streets, but the business of buying and selling girls will resume as soon as the graves are filled and the markets reopen. There is always another mouth to feed, another fortune to be made, another secret to be buried. You grow harder each year, more careful. You let no one see your true thoughts, and you never reveal the stories you carry. In the rare moments when you catch your reflection in a pane of wavy glass, you almost do not recognize yourself. You are a face among many, a whisper among the shouts of the market, the keeper of other people's nightmares. The city itself is a conspiracy of hunger and hope and fear. You survive by knowing just a little more than anyone else, and by knowing when to keep that knowledge to yourself. There are no heroes here, only survivors, and sometimes not even that. You are no villain, not in your own mind. You have simply learned the price of every secret and the cost of revealing even one. Your work truly begins once a family's decision is made. The mother gives a tiny nod. The father grinds his teeth and avoids everyone's eyes. The girl shrinks into herself, and you know the deal is done, whether words are spoken aloud or not. The next step is preparation, a word that sounds almost kind if you say it quickly. In truth, it is the act of erasing childhood and painting over fear with a layer of ritual that everyone pretends is gentleness. Preparation means many things. It means washing the girl until her skin glows raw, scrubbing away the dirt, the memory of mud and childhood games. It means combing her hair until the tangles and the tears are gone, binding it with ribbons or plaiting it into a neat braid. It means giving her borrowed clothes, never too fine, but clean and mended, as if that small mercy will soothe the sting of being offered like bread on a table. You work in the kitchens and cellars, in the hidden rooms above the butchers, anywhere private enough for mothers to weep without witnesses. Sometimes the mothers try to help, as if by touching their daughter's hair one last time, they can lay a blessing between the comb and the scalp. Some mothers chatter, offering advice the way they would before a wedding or festival. Stand up straight, they say. Smile if you can. Remember what I told you. Look down, speak softly, never answer back. These small rituals are meant to comfort, to impose order on chaos, but you see the tremble in every hand. There are other rituals too, the ones not spoken of in daylight. The whispered requests for a midwife to check the girl's purity, the herbal baths said to sweeten the skin, the prayers muttered under breath in dialects no noble ever learns. Some families bring talismans, tiny cloth bundles, to be sewn into the hem of a dress or hidden in a pocket. Protection, they call it, as if any such thing could exist. You have seen all these gestures so many times that they blur together, a collage of desperation. Some girls go through the motions like ghosts, their eyes hollow and their lips stitched shut by dread. Others rage, scream, scratch at your hands, or throw themselves against the walls. You do not hold it against them. Sometimes you wish more would scream. At least it means they still expect the world to care. You perform your own rituals as well. You make sure the room is as warm as possible. You find a crust of bread, an apple, something for the girl to eat. If you can, you tell a joke or hum a tune, anything to fill the suffocating silence. You try to make the girls feel seen, just for a moment, before they vanish into the world of buyers and bargains. You are not their mother, not their friend, but you know what it means to be alone and terrified. There are days when you wonder if you are washing them for slaughter or for sacrifice. It makes little difference. The inspection is next. The women who serve as checkers arrive, midwives, widows, sometimes an old nun with cloudy eyes and fingers cold as stones. They prod and poke, searching for signs no one truly understands. A torn hymen, a birthmark, a scar, any imperfection could reduce the price or scuttle the deal altogether. You stand by, expressionless, knowing that the ritual is theater, not science. But the buyers demand it, and the mothers hope for reassurance, so the game goes on. After the inspection, the girl is paraded before you, and sometimes before the mother, sometimes alone. The results are whispered, and coins are exchanged. Occasionally, a family tries to bribe the inspector, pressing a copper into her hand to look the other way. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the inspector is greedy and asks for more, driving the price up and the hope down. It is a world built on the fine line between truth and fiction. There are rituals for the body and rituals for the mind. The girls are coached on how to speak, how to bow, when to smile, when to be silent. They are told what to call the buyers: sir, madam, my lord, my lady, and how to answer questions. You see the panic in their faces as they try to remember these rules, as if etiquette can save them from what is to come. Some families, clinging to old customs, force their daughters to fast or drink bitter potions to purify their souls. Others keep them awake all night in prayer. You have watched as girls stumble into the morning, pale and exhausted, their faith battered by the weight of words that promise hope and deliver only endurance. On rare occasions, you are summoned by a buyer who demands something special: a performance, a song, a recitation of scripture. You arrange for a teacher, a neighbor, anyone willing to earn a few coins by rehearsing the girl and her lines. These rehearsals are anxious, awkward affairs, the girls tripping over words they do not understand, eyes darting to the door as if hoping for escape. Throughout all this, you keep your distance as much as you can. You offer kindness, but never enough to make you weak. You know that pity is dangerous. It blurs the line between you and them, and you need that line to stay sharp. Your job is to prepare the girls, not to save them. If you start believing otherwise, you will lose yourself. There are evenings, after a long day of preparation, when you sit alone and wonder if any of these rituals mean anything at all. You suspect they do not. They are performances for the benefit of the mothers, the buyers, and sometimes even the girls themselves. They give shape to the chaos, a sense of order to what is really just desperation, dressed up in borrowed finery. You wash your hands until your skin cracks. You scrub the floors, sweep the hearth, boil the rags. You try to make the space look clean, even if it never truly is. Cleanliness is part of the ritual, another illusion in a city that thrives on them. You know that none of it will protect the girls, but you do it anyway, because doing nothing would feel worse. When the time comes, you lead the girl to the appointed place: a chamber, a courtyard, a carriage waiting at dusk. You do not say goodbye. You do not offer false comfort. You simply nod, and she goes, and you turn away. There is always another girl to prepare, another ritual to perform. You tell yourself it is just business. You try not to think about what happens next. If you want to understand how the market survives, you must look up, past the broken rooftops and sagging walls, past the tangled alleys and the bickering of the poor, to where the city glitters. There, in halls lined with painted glass and floors scrubbed to a shine, the world is cleaner, brighter, but also far colder. The buyers who keep your business alive live behind locked gates, surrounded by walls thick enough to keep out the smell of rot and the sound of wailing. You know their world only from the edge, but even that is enough. It is said that the rich never get their hands dirty, and it is almost true. They do not bargain in person. They send agents, men and women with soft voices and hard eyes, dressed too well for your part of the city. They arrive on quiet feet, never lingering, always carrying messages that cannot be misunderstood. The master is in need of a girl, young, educated if possible, fair haired, untouched, or the lady wishes to host a celebration. Send three, no older than 12. There is no room for confusion. The coin is always ready. Sometimes, if the appetite is especially urgent or perverse, the rich dispense with discretion. There are parties, banquets, masked celebrations where girls are paraded like horses at auction. You have heard the stories whispered among the kitchen servants. Rooms lit with 100 candles, music playing while the wine flows, and the laughter grows sharper and more forced. The girls are led in, heads bowed, faces pale beneath too bright powder. The guests appraise them, murmur to each other, make their selections. A nod here, a raised hand there, and a life is changed forever. You have seen these feasts once or twice, though never as a guest. You are called in to present your wares, expected to stand silent at the wall while the buyers circle, their curiosity barely concealed behind a mask of good breeding. They speak of bloodlines and dowries, of beauty and grace, as if they are discussing livestock. You learn quickly not to speak unless spoken to, not to draw attention to yourself. Here, in this world, you are invisible, a necessary tool, nothing more. The men who buy the girls are not always old, nor are they always monsters, in the way stories say. Sometimes they are young, bored, spoiled by a life of excess. They see the purchase as a sport, another thrill to chase when gambling and hunting lose their edge. Sometimes the buyers are women, driven by vanity or cruelty, or by their own silent scars. The hunger of the rich is a bottomless well, and its shape is ever changing. For the powerful, virginity is a token, a symbol of power, acquired, broken, replaced. Some keep careful records, boasting in private of how many untouched girls have passed through their hands. Others insist on elaborate rituals, burning incense or reciting prayers to justify what they do. You watch them from the corner, noting how easily cruelty becomes custom, how quickly suffering turns into spectacle. The servants know, of course. The city's great houses run on gossip and silence in equal measure. Maids and butlers see the girls arrive and leave. Some avert their eyes, some profit quietly, demanding small bribes to keep their tongues still. A clever girl, you learn, can sometimes find an ally in the servants' hall, someone who will sneak her extra food or a clean cloth or warn her of what is to come. Most are not so lucky. You have learned to avoid asking questions. The less you know, the safer you are. But even so, you hear the stories. The girl who was sent away because she dared to look a guest in the eye. The one who did not survive her first night and whose mother was paid off to keep silent. The ones who disappear completely, sometimes found months later in a ditch, sometimes simply gone. You are haunted by the memory of their faces, though you do your best to forget. The buyers have rules of their own, but these are rules of convenience, not conscience. They demand discretion, obedience, a certain pliability. They want the girls to be frightened, but not rebellious, pretty, but not bold, innocent, but not naive enough to imagine escape. You see how quickly a girl learns these lessons, how her voice shrinks and her movements grow small. The powerful train them in 1,000 unspoken ways, molding them to fit whatever fantasy is most convenient. Occasionally, one of the powerful oversteps, drawing too much attention, leaving too many bruises. When this happens, the city's whispers grow sharper. A scandal is born, not because of the suffering itself, but because of its visibility. The church thunders from the pulpit, the officials demand answers, and the guilty party is quietly sent away or married off to another city. The business itself never stops. If anything, it grows more careful, more secretive, learning from each scandal how to hide better next time. You watch this world from your place at the bottom, knowing that its wealth is built on the bodies you sell. You see the banquet tables groaning under the weight of food, the silks imported from distant lands, the jeweled goblets filled and emptied a dozen times each night. You know that for every girl delivered, a family will eat for a month, or a debt will be paid, or a younger sibling will survive another winter. This is your justification, the only one you have left. But even as you count your coins, you know it is not enough. The gap between your world and theirs is unbridgeable. The rich move through the city like ghosts, untouched by hunger, by grief, by consequence. You see their children grow fat while yours waste away. You see their halls filled with laughter and music, while your own home echoes with silence and loss. The resentment is a slow poison seeping into your bones, but you swallow it with every meal you buy, every roof you patch, every debt you pay. You tell yourself that one day it will be different, that one day the world will notice the suffering that makes its pleasures possible. But you know, deep down, that this day will never come. The rich have always fed on the poor and always will. You are only the messenger, the shadow that passes between worlds, carrying the burdens of both and finding relief in neither. Still, you continue your work. There are always more girls to be sold, more buyers to be satisfied, more rituals to be observed. You wake each morning knowing that your hands will never be clean, but also that they will never be empty. The city above you feasts and celebrates, indifferent to the filth beneath its foundations. You are the unseen pillar holding up its gilded rooms, and you know that, for all their power, the rich are as trapped by their appetites as you are by your need. You always remember your first sale. You remember it not as a moment, but as a sequence of slow, grinding hours. The day itself is blurred with fog and noise, the sound of church bells, the stench of mud and dung in the street, the pale sun struggling behind clouds. You remember dressing the girl, combing her hair with hands that shook no matter how hard you willed them to be steady. You remember the way she stared at the wall, her mouth set in a thin, stubborn line. She was someone's child, though you tried hard not to think of her that way. She was your responsibility, but you told yourself, not your fault. Her mother cried when she thought no one was looking. Her father did not attend, sending a neighbor to represent the family as if this was a legal dispute instead of a sale. The girl herself was silent, but every movement she made, every small flinch, every sigh, felt like an accusation. You found yourself babbling instructions, warnings, comfort that sounded more like pleading. Be good, keep quiet, do not draw attention. The words felt useless, thin as dust. The buyer arrived late, as buyers often do, trailing the scent of expensive soap and impatience. He was not old, not cruel in any obvious way. He was, in fact, remarkably ordinary. He wore a ring with a family crest and asked polite questions about the weather. His eyes never left the girl, though, not once. You watched the negotiation unfold as if you were underwater, slow, muffled, inevitable. The price was set before you even opened your mouth. Her family's debts, the season's harvest, the rumors about her health, all had been calculated and recalculated a dozen times. The buyer brought a purse with just enough coin to seem generous, but not so much that anyone would think him extravagant. The exchange of money was businesslike, quiet, no raised voices, no haggling, only the cold clink of coins. It was over quickly, which you thought was merciful at the time. The buyer took the girl by the hand, as if she were being led to a market stall or a church pew. The mother wept openly now, clutching the coins and refusing to meet your gaze. You remember wondering, with a numb detachment, if she would ever forgive you, if she would ever forgive herself. The walk to the buyer's carriage was short, but it felt like crossing a continent. Every step echoed with the memory of your own sale, with the voices of other girls, with every bedtime story twisted into nightmare. The buyer gave you a polite nod, pressed an extra coin into your palm for your trouble, and disappeared into the mist. You stood there for a long time, holding the coin, watching the carriage vanish around a corner. The market went on, oblivious. Someone was selling cabbages, a child was crying, a dog barked at a passing cart. The world had not changed, but you had. You realized suddenly and completely that you would never be the same. The aftermath was worse than the sale itself. The girl's mother lingered, her grief pouring out in waves that made you want to run. You stood there, clutching your ledger, mumbling words that did nothing to ease her pain. She will be safe, you lied. She will be cared for. You wanted to believe it. You almost managed to. You walked home alone that evening. Every street seemed narrower, every window darker. You could feel the eyes of your neighbors, those who knew what you did, and those who pretended not to. You thought about the girl, wondered what her new life would be, wondered if she would survive her first week, her first night. Sleep did not come easily. You lay awake, replaying every detail, the buyer's voice, the girl's silence, the mother's tears. You tried to remember why you started this work, tried to remind yourself of necessity, of hunger, of all the careful reasons you recited to yourself. None of them sounded convincing anymore, but the next day dawned, as it always does. There were more girls to see, more mothers to comfort, more buyers to satisfy. You discovered that the pain did not go away, but it became quieter, easier to ignore. Each sale was a little less sharp, a little less real. You learned to put your feelings in a box, to lock them away where they could not interfere. The world demanded it. Other sales followed, each one blurring into the next. Faces changed, details shifted, but the script remained the same. Sometimes the buyers were kind, sometimes not. Sometimes the girls cried, sometimes they fought, sometimes they simply disappeared inside themselves. You grew practiced, efficient. You learned to speak the language of commerce, to negotiate prices without flinching, to dress wounds you could not see. But the first sale stayed with you. It was the line you crossed, the point of no return. It marked you, carved a hollow inside you that never truly filled. You caught yourself thinking, now and then, about the girl, where she had gone, whether she was still alive, whether she hated you. You tried not to wonder too much. Curiosity was dangerous, empathy even more so. You did not become hard overnight. It was a process, a slow erosion. You told yourself stories that the girl would have starved otherwise, that the mother would have lost her home, that you were only a cog in a much larger machine. Each story helped for a while. Each story became a shield. Years later, you would find yourself at another sale, another girl with the same haunted eyes, the same silent accusation. The buyer would offer the same handful of coins. You would nod, take the money, send the girl away. You would wonder, as you always did, if you might have done something different, if you might have refused just once. But you never did. The first sale is the hardest, everyone says. The rest are only a matter of habit. You discover that this is true, and also the greatest tragedy of all. You might think the greatest danger in your work comes from the buyers, their appetites, their violence, their whims. You would be only half right. The real peril is more diffuse, less predictable. It wears a badge and a uniform. It carries a club, and it calls itself the law. The city watch is not the same from one alley to the next. There are men who take their duties seriously, who patrol with stiff backs and righteous faces. You avoid these men whenever you can, slipping into a doorway or ducking behind a cart before they can spot you. They dislike what you do, or rather, they dislike that your business reminds them how little control they truly have. They cannot stop the hunger, or the buying and selling, or the quiet, endless desperation. Their authority is a show for the respectable, a bit of theater to make the city feel less rotten. More often, though, the guards are neither cruel nor virtuous. They are hungry, bored, and above all, for sale. In the market, nothing is free, not even justice. You have learned, painfully and thoroughly, the price of looking away, the price of forgetting. It is not always paid in coin. Sometimes it is bread, sometimes a favor, sometimes a name whispered in the dark. The first time a guard stopped you, you were new to the trade, clumsy and too honest. You carried your list in your head, but your face told every secret. He saw the fear, sniffed out the opportunity. His questions were casual: where you were going, what you were carrying, why you were visiting so many houses with so many little girls. You tried to smile, to play the fool, to pretend you were nothing more than a tired servant. It did not work. He took you by the arm, led you into a shadowy alcove behind a butcher's shop, and made his meaning clear with a hand pressed too hard on your shoulder. "This street's my business," he said. "You want to walk it, you pay." He wanted coin, of course, but also information. Who was buying? Who was selling? What rumors you had heard. You learned then and there that survival was a matter of trading one secret for another. After that, you carried extra coins sewn into your hem, small enough to pass without notice, large enough to buy a smile or a blind eye. Some weeks you spent more on bribes than you earned from your deals. The guards would sometimes turn up just as you were handing off a girl, making a show of asking questions, then melting away once their palms were greased. There are rules to this game, but they change without warning. A new captain is appointed, and suddenly you are expected to pay twice as much. A rumor sweeps through the watch house, a scandal involving a noble's son, a priest caught with a girl from the market, and the guards tighten their grip, doubling their fees and threatening arrests. You learn to recognize the mood of the city by the way the watchmen walk: hurried when things are quiet, slow and swaggering when coin is short. Some guards are cleverer than others. They ask for names, not money, wanting to know which buyers are growing careless, which rivals are undercutting you. If you refuse, they make trouble: a raid on your usual meeting place, a sudden inspection of your girls, a rumor spread that your wares are tainted. You learn to offer just enough to keep them satisfied, but never too much. Information is a currency you spend only when you must. There are times when the law does more than look the other way. A buyer too important, a scandal too large, and suddenly the watchmen are rounding up anyone even rumored to be involved. You have seen women dragged from their homes, accused of crimes, for which the real criminals sit feasting behind locked doors. You have spent nights hiding in cellars, listening to the tramp of boots above you, counting the coins in your pocket, and wondering if they would be enough to buy your freedom one more time. You try not to hate the guards. They are part of the same machine as you, caught between power and poverty, doing what they must to survive. You watch as they shake down merchants, slap children for petty theft, escort the wealthy through the market with smiles and empty threats. Some are brutes, yes, but most are simply tired men with debts and hungry wives. You see yourself in them, or you try to, but the danger is always there. A guard in a bad mood, a deal gone wrong, and suddenly you are fighting for your life with words, coins, or fists. You have scars to prove it, a broken finger that never healed straight, a welt across your back from a night in a cell. You tell yourself these are the cost of doing business. You try to believe it. The girls notice the guards too. They flinch when they see the uniforms, turn their faces to the wall. Some guards like to leer, to threaten, to remind everyone who is really in charge. You teach your girls to be polite, to answer only when spoken to never, ever look a guard in the eye unless invited. It is a lesson learned quickly and never forgotten. You hear stories of other cities, places where the law is harsher, where the trade is punished with the rope or the pyre. You wonder if those stories are true, if there are places in the world where innocence is really protected, where the poor are not forced to sell their children. You wonder, and then you remember the faces of the guards, the press of their hands, the weight of their stares. You remember that hope is the most expensive currency of all, and one you cannot afford. In the end, you become as skilled in the art of negotiation with the watch as you are with buyers and sellers. You walk the line between fear and necessity, learning who can be trusted for a favor and who will turn on you for a copper. You never let your guard down. Never assume yesterday's arrangement will last through tomorrow. The city's rules are written in dust and washed away with every rain. At night, when you count your coins and nurse your bruises, you wonder how long you can keep dancing this dance. You tell yourself you will stop someday, that you will save enough to leave the city, to buy a farm, to become invisible. But the city holds you fast. The guards and buyers and desperate mothers, all part of the same net. And you, tangled in its threads, keep moving. One bribe, one whisper, one careful step at a time. Once a girl leaves your hands, her story is no longer yours to know. You have learned this lesson the hard way. Curiosity is a wound that never heals. Still, you cannot help but wonder, sometimes, what becomes of them. You imagine a forked path, one road vanishing into luxury and warmth, another winding down into darkness. But even your imagination, battered and worn by years of disappointment, cannot dress up the truth for long. Some buyers keep their promises, at least for a time. A handful of girls become servants in fine houses. They wear better clothes, eat regular meals, sleep in beds not made of straw, but of something softer, something that might almost be called comfort. You hear about these girls in passing, a kind word from a housekeeper, a nod from a coachman who remembers your face. She is well enough, they say. She does what she is told, no trouble. But well enough is not the same as happiness. These girls become shadows, learning quickly that obedience is prized above all. They shrink into themselves, swallowing their words, their anger, their hopes. If they are lucky, their new masters see them as invisible, nothing more than hands to wash linen, feet to fetch water, eyes to look away. If they are less fortunate, they become targets for cruelty, disguised as discipline. A slap here, a pinch there, punishments for mistakes that only exist in the mind of the master. Some are sent away for imagined slights, their reputation forever marked by whispers and lies. Others are not so lucky from the start. There are buyers who do not want servants, who have no patience for innocence, except as something to break. You know the look in their eyes, the questions they ask about silence, about secrecy, about how soon a girl can be delivered. You see their wagons pull away into the night, windows covered, drivers faceless. For these girls, there are no stories told after. No one boasts of what became of them. No one asks after their well being. You do not see them in the market again, nor in the kitchens, nor even on the streets. Their fate is a blank space, a silence so deep it echoes. Sometimes a mother will come to you, weeks or months after the sale, hoping for news. Have you seen her? She whispers, clutching at your arm. Has she sent word? You learn to shake your head gently, to offer what comfort you can. She is safe, you say, though you know you are lying. She will write soon. You know she will not. The city swallows girls whole. It is not only the buyers who do this, but the world itself, a machine built to consume the weak and the unwanted. Some girls run away, vanishing into alleys where even the watch will not follow. They become thieves, beggars, whores, whatever the city will let them be. They learn new names, new ways of surviving. You sometimes glimpse one, months or years later, her face older, harder, eyes darting like a cornered animal's. She does not look at you, and you do not call her name. A few girls survive long enough to be sold again and again. Their value drops each time, but there are always buyers for those who are desperate, those who do not care about purity, but only price. These girls are pale shadows by then, their laughter lost, their hopes spent. Some grow cunning, learning to twist their misfortune into advantage. They steal from their masters, run cons in the street, barter secrets for coin. Some find protectors, usually older women who run the city's less reputable establishments, brothels, gambling dens, soup kitchens for the desperate. There is no happy ending here, only a different kind of survival. There are stories, always, about the ones who make it. The girl who marries a rich merchant, who rises above her station, who sends for her family and saves them all from poverty. These stories are told at night, whispered around kitchen fires or over mugs of cheap ale, but you have never met such a girl. You suspect she exists only in the dreams of mothers desperate to believe their sacrifice was not in vain. The worst fates are the ones no one speaks of. The girls who disappear entirely, sometimes found dead in a ditch, sometimes never found at all. The city is full of holes, wells, alleys, old houses falling in on themselves. There are people who make a living disposing of bodies, no questions asked. Sometimes a buyer returns, asking for another girl, their voice cold, their eyes blank. You know what that means. You do not ask questions. You tell yourself you are not responsible for what happens after the sale. It is the rule of the market. Your duty ends at the handoff. But rules are only as strong as the silence that keeps them, and silence is heavy. It settles on your shoulders, pressing you down, growing heavier with every name, every story, every memory you cannot shake. Sometimes you dream of the girls. In your dreams, they stand in the market, waiting to be chosen. They are silent, always silent, but their eyes follow you, accusing. You wake with your heart racing, your mouth dry. You promise yourself you will be stronger tomorrow, more distant, more practical. You tell yourself that empathy is for the foolish, that regret is for the weak. And yet, you remember the first girl and the second and the 10th. You remember the ones who smiled, who cried, who begged, who simply walked away as if nothing had happened. You remember their names, though you pretend you do not. You keep a ledger in your mind, a list of debts that will never be paid. The city moves on, the market opens, the buyers come, the mothers weep, the girls vanish. No one asks what happens next. No one wants to know. You become a master of not knowing, of looking away, of closing the door on stories that do not end well. In the end, you realize that the fate of the girls is the fate of everyone in your city, to be used up, forgotten, and replaced. You tell yourself that you are different, that you have choices, but deep down you know you are part of the same machinery. The difference is only in the details, and so you carry on, adding names to the list, coins to your purse, years to your memory. You pray, if you pray at all, that you will not be remembered when your own time comes. You hope that your silence will be enough to protect you from the ghosts you have helped create. Every business in the city runs on a kind of logic, and yours is no exception. It is a brutal logic, stripped of all decoration. People eat or they starve. Parents pay debts or they are turned out onto the streets. Children become coin or they become corpses. When you began this work, you tried to fit yourself into this machinery with the cold precision of a cog, believing that if you could only perfect the reasoning, the pain would be dulled. But pain does not listen to logic, and neither does guilt. It creeps in during the moments between deals, the pause before a door opens, the breath you take after a girl has been led away, the half second between counting coins and closing your ledger. You find yourself repeating the same phrases in your mind, trying to drown out the noise of doubt with the chant of necessity. There is no choice. If I did not do this, someone else would. I am only doing what must be done. It never quite works. Sometimes you stare at your hands, clean enough by city standards, but stained in ways no water or soap can erase. You count the lines on your palms and wonder how many lives you have changed, how many fates have passed through your fingers. You try to believe that you are no worse than any other merchant, that your wares are simply the only ones anyone will pay for. There are moments of respite when you feel almost righteous. You tell yourself you are a necessary evil, a shield between the truly vile and the merely desperate. If not for you, you argue, the girls would be snatched in the night, traded by men with no patience for bargaining, no interest in the safety or comfort of the families involved. You are orderly, discreet, professional, you pay on time. You listen to the mothers, you answer the questions, you refuse when you can. Buyers who are known for their cruelty. You keep careful records, not just for yourself, but as a kind of penance, a silent list of all the times you tried to do less harm. But conscience is a trickster. On nights when the city is quiet and your stomach is full, you feel the walls closing in. You remember the faces of the girls you have sold. Some are still children, some barely out of childhood, all of them carrying a look you cannot quite name, a mixture of fear and resignation, and something harder, betrayal perhaps. You wonder if they think of you as a villain, a traitor, a last bad choice made by desperate parents. You know the city sees you as a shadow, a necessary one perhaps, but not a clean one. Some spit at your feet as you pass. Others lower their eyes and hope you will not recognize them, not remind them of bargains made long ago. There are families who still cross the street when they see you, even after years have passed. You have been cursed, threatened, begged for mercy. You have watched women who once wept on your shoulder now avert their gaze, ashamed of what they did and of what you allowed. You are not a monster. You know that, or you think you do. Monsters do not feel regret. Monsters do not lie awake at night, haunted by the sound of a child sobbing or a mother's whispered prayer. But you are not innocent either. The line between necessity and cruelty is thin and shifting, always moving just out of reach. You try to fill the void with routine. You keep your shoes polished, your hair neat, your books in order. You sweep your doorstep every morning as if to prove to yourself and the world that you can still create a small pocket of decency. You cling to small gestures of kindness, an extra coin pressed into a mother's palm, a loaf of bread left at a doorstep, a promise kept when it would have been easier to forget. These things matter, you tell yourself. These things count. But at the end of the day, you cannot escape the arithmetic. Every act of kindness is outweighed by the ledger's relentless tally. Every girl delivered is another line in the book, another ghost added to the growing chorus that follows you through the streets. You find yourself avoiding the places where children play, avoiding the church on feast days, avoiding the eyes of the watchman. You avoid mirrors too, unless it is absolutely necessary. Sometimes you imagine confessing everything to a priest, to a friend, to a stranger. You imagine the relief of saying it all aloud, of letting someone else carry the burden for a while. But the words catch in your throat, heavy with shame and self preservation. Confession would change nothing, and there are no saints left in the city to offer absolution. You envy the simple certainty of those who judge you. They do not know what hunger feels like, or how desperation sharpens every choice until there is only the thinnest margin between survival and ruin. They have never sat across from a mother whose last hope is a daughter's purity, or listened to the quiet panic in a father's voice as he calculates what must be done. They think evil wears a villain's cloak, but you know it is dressed in rags and dirt, and sometimes it wears your own face. Despair becomes a habit, like any other. You learn to carry it without complaint, to tuck it into your coat with your purse and your ledger. You learn to smile at buyers, to bow to guards, to keep your voice steady when your heart is full of ash. You become adept at self deception, at believing your own lies, at pretending you do not see the world as it truly is. Now and then, you consider walking away. You imagine another life, somewhere far from the city, fields, a cottage, the smell of bread baking in a clean oven. You have heard rumors of villages where girls grow up to marry boys they choose themselves, where mothers do not count daughters as debts. But you know it is a fantasy. The city is in your blood. The business is in your bones. And so you go on, each day much like the last, each year a little heavier than the one before. You wonder, sometimes, how it will end for you. You do not believe in redemption. You hope, instead, for oblivion, a quiet slipping away, unnoticed, unremembered, unjudged. You hope that, when your time comes, the girls whose lives passed through your hands will not linger at your grave, their silence heavier than any epitaph. Until then, you keep walking, keep bargaining, keep surviving. You are not a monster, but neither are you a martyr. You are only human, caught in the slow, grinding machinery of a city that does not forgive and does not forget. There are no friends in your business. There are only rivals, some obvious, some invisible, all of them watching for your first misstep. You are not the only one who has learned to profit from the city's hunger. The trade in girls is older than the city itself, and each new season brings a fresh crop of women, young, old, desperate, clever, each convinced she will outlast the rest. Competition is a game without rules, or perhaps with so many rules that no one can remember them all. You learn quickly that your reputation is your only shield. Buyers come to you not because they like you, no one likes you, but because they know you deliver what you promise. The girls are healthy, the price is fair, and you keep your mouth shut. This is all that matters. But reputations are fragile, and the city is full of tongues eager to wag. The other suppliers watch you as closely as you watch them. They spread rumors that your girls are sick, that you undercut the market, that you inform for the city watch. Lies move faster than truth, and you are always scrambling to stamp out fires started by jealous rivals. Sometimes competition is subtle, a sidelong glance in the market, a whispered word to a mother thinking of bringing her daughter to you. Sometimes it is open war. You have had goods stolen, buyers poached at the last moment, messages intercepted and lost. Once you arrived at a meeting only to find your way barred by a pair of hired thugs, silent, arms folded, smiles sharp as knives. You left quietly, heart racing, and counted yourself lucky. There is a hierarchy to the business, though no one speaks of it openly. At the bottom are the desperate, women too poor or too frightened to bargain well, always taking the worst deals, always losing out when times get lean. Above them are the clever ones, women with a talent for secrets and negotiation. At the top are the old hands, the legends, some little more than ghosts, whose names are spoken only in whispers. You have heard of women who became rich from the trade, who retired to country estates, who bought their way into respectability. You have never met one. Sometimes rivals become allies for a season, a shared threat, a joint venture, a mutual buyer who pays well enough to be worth the risk. These alliances are fragile, brittle as old bone, liable to shatter at the first sign of profit. You have worked with other suppliers when it suited you, pooling resources to satisfy a demanding buyer, splitting the proceeds of a rare bulk order. But you never let your guard down. Trust is the first luxury to be abandoned. You have learned to be ruthless, though it did not come easily. You remember the first time you had to lie about a rival, the sick twist in your gut as you saw her reputation begin to crumble. You told yourself it was necessary, that she would have done the same to you, that it was her or you. Now you hardly blink. You have learned the value of rumor, the sharpness of a whispered half truth, the power of planting doubt in the right ear. The buyers encourage the competition, of course. They pit you against one another, demanding lower prices, better girls, quicker deliveries. They thrive on your desperation, knowing that as long as you are fighting among yourselves, you will never unite against them. Some buyers play favorites, nurturing a handful of suppliers like gardeners, tending rare flowers, only to discard them when something younger or cheaper comes along. There are those who try to regulate the trade, to bring order to the chaos. Now and then, a self appointed leader emerges, someone who tries to impose rules, fixed prices, designated territories, penalties for stealing clients. These efforts always fail. The city is too large, the hunger too great, the stakes too high. No one trusts anyone for long, and those who try to control the trade usually end up ruined, or worse. Violence is never far from the surface. You have heard stories of rivals poisoned or stabbed, their bodies found in alleys with their tongues cut out. You have seen homes burned to the ground, families forced to flee in the night, all because someone whispered the wrong secret to the wrong person. The city watch turns a blind eye, so long as their palms remain greased and the bodies do not pile up too quickly. You guard your own territory with care. You cultivate your contacts, midwives, innkeepers, stable boys, even a few of the kinder guards. You reward loyalty and punish betrayal, always with a smile, always with a coin. You learn to read faces, to spot fear and greed and hope. You never turn your back, never show weakness, never let anyone know how tired you really are. The girls, of course, notice the competition, though they rarely understand its true nature. They see the way you tense when another supplier enters the room, the way you guard your words, the way your eyes never stop moving. Some of them learn to play the game themselves, pitting you against your rivals in the hope of a better deal, a gentler hand, a softer fate. You respect their cunning even as you resent the necessity of it. There are moments, rare but real, when you almost pity your rivals. You see them in the market, faces drawn, shoulders hunched, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. You hear the weariness in their voices, the bitterness in their jokes. You know they are as trapped as you, as desperate, as hollowed out by years of fear and guilt. But pity is dangerous, a crack in the armor, and you cannot afford it. In the end, competition is just another fact of life. You accept it as you accept hunger, cold, and the slow, grinding loss of hope. You tell yourself that if you are clever, if you are ruthless, if you never let your guard down, you might survive a little longer. Maybe, if you are lucky, you will outlast your enemies. Maybe, if you are luckier still, you will walk away before the city swallows you whole. But you know, deep down, that luck is just another word for postponing the inevitable. The city forgets everyone eventually. Your rivals, your buyers, your girls, and even you. And so you sharpen your smile, count your coins, and step into the street. The game goes on, and you must play it until the very end. Fear is not a sudden thing. It is not the shout in the night or the knife at your back. It grows quietly, steadily, like rot in a beam, invisible at first, but spreading all the same. At the start, you believe yourself above it. You are careful, shrewd, quick with a smile, and quicker with a coin. You keep your head down, mind your business, pay your debts, and think yourself immune. But fear finds everyone in the end, and you are no exception. It starts as a whisper, something barely noticed, a buyer who stops returning your greetings, a rival whose smile has grown too fixed, too sharp. You hear your own name mentioned in the marketplace, not as a curse, but as a question. Have you seen her? Does she know? Was it her? You walk a little faster. Your eyes flicker to every alley, every door left ajar. There are new faces in the streets, men who do not look away when you catch them staring, women who walk behind you a little too long, children whose laughter dies when you pass. The city has always been a maze, but now the walls seem to close in. The alleys grow narrower, the shadows thicker. You begin to feel watched even when you are alone. It is not always clear what or who you should fear. Sometimes it is the buyers, men grown impatient, angry at a price or a rumor or a delay. Sometimes it is your rivals who have decided you are too successful, too dangerous, too visible. Sometimes it is the guards, bored and greedy and hungry for someone to blame when the wind shifts and scandal threatens. You remember the first time the fear broke through your practiced calm. You were on your way home, purse heavy, mind busy with calculations, when a hand shot out from the dark and clamped around your wrist. You dropped your bag, heard the coins scatter into the gutter, heard the voice in your ear, low, urgent, almost kind. Leave off your trade for a week, it said. Let another take your turn. It is not your time, and you would do well to remember it. You did not sleep that night. You locked your door, barred your windows, sat up listening for footsteps. In the morning, you swept up the broken glass someone had thrown against your wall. You told yourself it was a warning, not a threat. You told yourself you would be more careful. But the fear remained, a constant companion, settling into your bones. You see it now in every face, the tightness in the mouth, the flicker in the eyes, the careful way people move around you. The city runs on fear as much as on coin or blood. Mothers fear for their daughters, daughters for themselves. Buyers fear exposure, rivals fear ruin, guards fear their superiors. Everyone fears hunger, most of all. Fear changes you. You become more watchful, less trusting. You move quickly from place to place, never lingering, never using the same route 2 days in a row. You carry your money in 3 different pouches, hiding them in your clothes, your boots, your hair. You learn to sleep lightly, to wake at the slightest noise, to keep a knife under your mattress and a heavy stick by the door. You become adept at reading signs, the changed tone in a buyer's voice, the forced cheer in a rival's greeting, the way the city watch stands a little closer, lingers a little longer. You see the marks left on doors, the strange patterns in the mud, the bits of colored cloth tied to a fence post, messages, warnings, signals of allegiance or threat. You learn a new language, one built on glances and silences and small, deliberate acts. There are nights when you wonder if it is worth it, this constant vigilance, this never ending anxiety. You imagine giving it all up, running away to a place where no one knows your name, where the only thing to fear is the weather or the wolves. But you know that fear would follow you, carried inside your own chest, like a wound that will not heal. Sometimes you dream of being caught, dragged before a crowd, exposed for what you are. You see yourself in chains, the city pointing and jeering, mothers throwing curses, fathers demanding justice for daughters lost. You wake with your heart pounding, sweat chilling your skin, convinced for a moment that it is real. You rise in the dark and pace your small room, counting your breaths until the sun comes up. Fear does not just keep you safe, it keeps you sharp. It is the edge on your tongue when you bargain, the calculation in your smile, the reason you never let your back rest against an unlocked door. It is the knowledge that every kindness must be weighed against the risk of being seen as weak. You have learned to show mercy only when it will not be mistaken for an opening. And yet, even the sharpest vigilance cannot keep all danger at bay. There are days when you hear of another supplier who has disappeared, a woman found floating in the river, a house burned to the ground, a name struck off the ledgers with no explanation. You grieve in your own way, not for the woman herself, but for what her absence means. There is one less buffer between you and the threats circling ever closer. The fear seeps into everything. It changes how you walk, how you eat, how you sleep, how you love, if you ever did love, if you still can. It changes how you think, turning every decision into a choice between safety and profit, between survival and dignity. You catch yourself wishing, sometimes, for a single day without fear, a day when you could walk the streets with your head up, your eyes unguarded, your heart steady. But that day never comes. You wake each morning to the same gray light, the same anxious routine, the same heavy sense that the world is closing in. You tell yourself it is only temporary, that things will get better, that this too will pass. But you know, deep down, that fear is as much a part of you as your shadow. You carry it with you, always. It is the price you pay for surviving in a city where no one is ever truly safe and everyone is always afraid. By now, you understand that the city does not run on laws or morals, but on shadows. The true business is always done in the half light, in cellars and back rooms, in the cramped alcoves behind kitchens, and beneath taverns where the fire never quite reaches the corners. If you want to survive, if you want to thrive, you must learn to move quietly through this hidden world, never drawing too much attention, never lingering where your name might be overheard by the wrong ears. It is a world of intermediaries and go-betweens, a constant shuffle of faces and names that never stay the same for long. Rarely do the buyers and sellers meet face to face. They send messages instead, passing news and requests through a chain of trusted contacts, an innkeeper, a washerwoman, a street urchin who knows where to run and when to keep his mouth shut. Sometimes it feels as though the city itself is listening, learning, taking notes for some vast, invisible ledger. You have your own circle of confidants, though the word is too strong for what they truly are. Allies, perhaps, but only for as long as it serves their needs. There is the old midwife, hands always stained, who checks your girls and vouches for their innocence when required. There is the butcher's wife, who will let you use her storeroom for a meeting if the price is right, and will just as quickly betray you to a rival if the payment is better. There are the guards who linger in the alleys, their silence bought and sold with every passing moon. You have become skilled in the language of shadows. There is a way to ask a question without asking it, a way to arrange a meeting without a word being spoken. A girl with a blue ribbon in her hair, a loaf of bread left on a windowsill, a tap at the back door 3 times, then once, then twice. If you are clever, if you are careful, You can move through this world like a ghost, always present, never seen. Business here is not simply business, it is survival, and survival demands compromise. Sometimes the compromise is small, a coin slipped to a guard, a favor exchanged, a promise made and kept or broken. Sometimes it is much larger, a betrayal that leaves you sick for days, or a decision to turn your back on someone you once trusted. Every step you take in the black market is a step away from the person you once thought you were. There are rules, unwritten but absolute. Never cheat a powerful buyer. Their memory is long and their reach extends farther than the city walls. Never cross the wrong supplier. Even a whispered accusation can end with your body in the river. Never speak openly of business, even in what feels like privacy. Walls have ears, and sometimes the ears belong to people you thought you could trust. You learn to trust slowly, if at all. The girls themselves are sometimes aware of the network, sometimes not. Some are too frightened or too resigned to care. Others learn to listen, to watch, to slip through the cracks when no one is looking. You have seen girls vanish into the night, helped by a sympathetic washerwoman or an ambitious thief who sees a different kind of value in a desperate child. You do not always search for them. The market punishes sentiment, and too much kindness is remembered as a weakness. You have seen how quickly loyalty is traded. Today's partner is tomorrow's competitor. Today's ally is tomorrow's accuser. You have learned to greet everyone with the same measured smile, the same careful words. You make promises you intend to keep, and promises you intend to forget as soon as your back is turned. Every handshake is a gamble, every agreement a test. The work is not only dangerous, it is exhausting. You carry a dozen secrets in your head at all times, careful not to let them slip, careful to forget what needs forgetting, and remember only what keeps you safe. Sometimes you envy the simple certainty of honest trades. The baker who sells bread, the tailor who mends a coat, the woman who sells candles in the square. But you know that even their world is built on shadows, only less obvious ones. Now and then, the network fails. A meeting goes wrong, a buyer grows impatient and leaves before the deal is struck. A girl is discovered missing, a shipment intercepted by a rival or the watch. When this happens, the repercussions ripple outward, touching everyone who is even loosely connected. Trust is broken, alliances shattered. Sometimes blood is spilled. In these moments, you remember how fragile your safety is. You keep an emergency purse hidden under a loose floorboard, a change of clothes ready to be grabbed in the night. You make mental notes of the safest routes out of the city, the friends who might harbor you for a day or two, the places where your name is still unknown. You are always ready to run, though you rarely allow yourself to think what running would really mean. You see others brought down by a single careless word, a single misjudged deal. You hear the stories, the supplier whose tongue grew too loose after a night's drinking, the boy who boasted too loudly of the coins he carried, the midwife caught between two rival factions. Their ends are quick and ugly, reminders that in the black market there are no second chances. Still, you keep moving. The city's hunger is never satisfied, and there is always work to be done. Another girl to deliver, another buyer to placate, another deal to negotiate with all the precision and caution of a surgeon opening a vein. The shadows grow thicker, but you have learned to walk within them, to breathe them in and make them part of yourself. You wonder sometimes if you have become one of the city's ghosts, a figure seen but never known, always present but never remembered. You wonder if, when you finally vanish, anyone will notice or care. Perhaps that is the best you can hope for, to disappear quietly, leaving behind only the faintest trace, a whisper in the dark corners where business is still done and secrets are still sold. Until then, you play your part in the shadow network, keeping the machinery running, your life balanced on the edge of every whispered deal. After a while, the pain dulls. It does not go away, but it becomes background noise, the endless ache of a tooth too rotten to be pulled, the constant itch of a scar that will never heal. You learn to function in spite of it, or perhaps because of it. In a city built on the bones of the desperate, survival means learning to ignore the taste of misery. You stop flinching at screams. You stop shuddering at the sight of fresh bruises. You stop thinking of the girls as people, at least most of the time, not because you are heartless, but because the heart cannot bear so much grief. You develop the blank look, the professional voice, the hands that never tremble. You become efficient, cold, reliable, a trait that buyers appreciate and that mothers resent, though they still come to you when the need grows urgent. The girls adapt in their own ways. Some shut down completely, eyes glazed, faces empty, every movement mechanical. These are the easiest to sell, obedient, pliant, unlikely to cause trouble. Others fight, but the fight rarely lasts. Hunger and fear are strong teachers. The girls who survive longest learn to move quietly, to make themselves invisible, to sense the moods of buyers, and to anticipate every whim before it becomes a command. You have seen girls no older than 10 learn the art of flattery, the skill of apology, the deadness of true submission. There are exceptions, of course. Now and then, a girl refuses to break. She stares back at buyers with defiance in her eyes, answers softly, but never sweetly, endures every blow with a stubbornness that frightens even you. These girls are not valued in the market. Buyers want innocence, yes, but not courage. Obedience, not spirit. The defiant ones are sold cheap, or not at all. Some disappear into the streets, becoming pickpockets or beggars, their stubbornness earning them a short, brutal life. You tell yourself it is better not to remember their names. Some days you succeed. Some days the names return anyway, whispering at the edge of sleep, making you sit up in the dark and count the faces you wish you could forget. The mothers adapt too, though most will never admit it. At first, they weep and plead and bargain, but over time, The ritual becomes routine. They bring their daughters to you with practiced resignation, reciting the list of virtues and flaws as if they are discussing a goat or a sack of grain. They no longer look you in the eye. They no longer linger for comfort after the deal is struck. They accept the coins with numb fingers, turn away, and vanish into the fog, their grief tucked out of sight. You watch all this, day after day, year after year. The city changes around you. New rulers, new laws, new faces in the market, but the business remains the same. Hunger is eternal, and innocence is always for sale. The rich may change their vices, the buyers may come and go, but the supply never ends. There is always another family on the brink of starvation, always another child to be traded, always another soul to be lost. You try, sometimes, to recall what life was like before you entered this trade. You remember vague images, a mother's smile, a sunlit street, a bowl of warm soup, but they feel distant, like someone else's memories. The city has worn you down, ground away the parts that once hoped or cared or dreamed. You are not proud of what you have become, but you are not ashamed either. Shame is for those who can afford to stop and think. You keep moving because movement is life and stillness is death. The buyers are often the most unchanged of all. Year after year, they return with the same requests, the same rituals, the same smug sense of entitlement. Some age, growing more discreet, more careful. Others pass their appetites to sons or nephews, ensuring the business will continue long after you are gone. You sometimes wonder if they know how obvious their desires are, how easily they could be replaced by any of the 100 other men who move through the city's upper world. Sometimes, when the mood strikes, you try to imagine a world without this trade, a world where no one is desperate enough to sell their children, where buyers find themselves powerless and alone, where girls grow up to choose their own futures. But the fantasy collapses almost immediately. You have lived too long in the real world to believe in such stories. The machinery is too large, too old, too deeply rooted. You are only one cog, and the system would run without you. There are moments when you see flickers of something like kindness, an older woman who slips a piece of bread to a girl waiting to be sold, a buyer who treats his purchase with unexpected gentleness, a mother who weeps in secret and tries to find her daughter afterward, even if she knows she will never succeed. These moments are rare, and you do not trust them. The city grinds up kindness as quickly as it does innocence. You begin to understand why some people choose to drink, to lose themselves in the oblivion of cheap wine or stronger spirits. You have considered it yourself more than once, but you need your wits about you. In this business, a single careless word can mean ruin. You watch others succumb, see how quickly they fall from the market's favor, how eagerly the city devours those who grow weak or slow or sentimental. You swear you will not be one of them. Instead, you bury your sorrow in work. You polish your shoes, clean your small room, keep your records in perfect order. You set aside coins for the future you no longer truly believe in. You make your rounds, prepare the girls, hand over the money, move on to the next transaction. The days blend together, the years become a blur. The pain never vanishes, but you learn to live around it. If anyone were to ask how you endure, you would not know how to answer. You do not endure, not exactly. You persist, you outlast. You become as much a part of the city as the stones in the road or the smoke in the sky. You have stopped asking for meaning. You have stopped looking for hope. You are not lost. You know exactly where you are. You simply do not know if there is anywhere else to go. You used to think the market's hunger was limitless. For years, it seemed the city's appetite could never be sated. Buyers were always waiting, money always moving, families always desperate enough to sell. But everything decays in time, even the ugliest institutions. Now you see signs of change everywhere, though none of it is for the better. At first, you barely notice. There are the usual rumors: a bad harvest, new taxes, a handful of rich men lost to plague or sudden exile. One day, a regular buyer disappears without a word. Another closes his purse, offering half what he paid last season. You see more mothers lingering at the edge of the market, holding out for a price they will never see again. The girls arrive thinner, quieter, their eyes dulled by hunger, before you even ask them to keep silent. Coin is scarce, and when it appears, it moves fast and without pity. The buyers, sensing weakness, begin to dictate terms. Where once you could bargain, now you take what is offered or risk being left with nothing. You lower your prices, then lower them again. The old rituals, bathing, dressing, the inspection by the midwife, become hurried, perfunctory. Even the buyers no longer pretend to care. They look past the girls as if already planning their next transaction. In this new world, nothing is sacred. Families sell younger children, even infants, hoping that by placing a daughter early, they might at least save her from the worst of the street. The definition of innocence shifts, blurs. The midwives who used to confirm a girl's purity now simply pocket a coin and say whatever is needed to close a sale. Buyers rarely ask for guarantees anymore. What good is a promise when no one believes it? Desperation turns vicious. The competition that was once sly and political becomes open and brutal. There are more fights in the alleys, suppliers clawing at one another for the last half starved girl in a family that once would have turned up their noses at the trade. Rumors of poisonings, of knives in the night, of girls simply vanishing before they ever reach the market, swirl like smoke. You keep your head down, but even you are not immune. Someone slashes the tires on your cart. Another time, you find a dead rat nailed to your door, its mouth stuffed with a copper coin. With the drop in prices comes a rise in danger. Buyers become careless, crueler. There are no favors now, no special requests, only bargains struck in whispers, threats made in the open, a new impatience in every gesture. Girls are treated more like meat than ever. Some do not survive even a week in their new homes. The city watch, never noble, now grows openly predatory. They extort what little you have left, raid your contacts, demand a share of your ever shrinking profits. There are fewer girls, but even fewer buyers who can pay. The market begins to eat itself. Suppliers you have known for years vanish. Some flee, some are caught by the law, some simply disappear, their debts left behind for others to shoulder. You hear stories of families who try to pass off older daughters as younger, who bribe midwives for forged certificates, who even steal children from distant relatives and bring them in as their own. The shame that once wrapped the trade like a veil is gone, replaced by a cold, practical savagery. You become more ruthless than you ever thought possible. There is no room for kindness now. Every deal is survival, every failure a potential death sentence. You watch mothers weep not for lost daughters, but for lost income. You watch buyers threaten to return girls as if they were spoiled fruit, demanding compensation or simply casting the child into the street when she fails to please. You watch yourself, numb and silent, moving through it all like a ghost with pockets full of grief and dust. The rituals that gave the trade its cruel dignity crumble away. No one bothers to pray anymore. There are no blessings, no goodbyes. Every transaction is a hurried, joyless exchange, coin for girl, girl for coin, and then nothing. Even the city itself seems to sag under the weight of despair. The stones are cracked, the gutters overflow, and the market smells more of rot than ever. Sometimes you think of quitting, of walking away, and letting the whole rotten system collapse behind you. But you have nowhere to go, no skills beyond those the city has beaten into you. You have debts of your own, promises to keep, enemies to avoid. Even if you wanted to run, you know you would not get far. You have become as much a part of the market as the stones beneath your feet. You see your own future mirrored in the faces of the girls, eyes ringed with exhaustion, skin pulled tight by hunger, hope leached out until only endurance remains. Some of the oldest girls, those who were never bought and never wanted, band together for protection. They carve out their own niche at the edges of the market, selling what little they have left to passing soldiers or drunken travelers. They sneer at you as you pass, but you cannot blame them. You understand what it is to be made expendable. One day, you realize you do not remember the last time a buyer looked you in the eye. Transactions are done through intermediaries, notes, a glance, and a nod. You have become invisible even as you remain essential. The power you once wielded, fragile and shameful as it was, has faded. You are a relic of a business that no longer knows its own rules. You begin to hear new rumors that the city council wants to clean up the market, that a new magistrate is coming, that punishments will be harsher, examples made. You do not believe these stories, but you prepare all the same. You hide your best coins, burn old ledgers, Instruct the girls who remain never to use your name. It is too late for most of these precautions, but you do them anyway. Habit is the last thing left when hope is gone. At night, the city seems quieter. The shouting in the market is muffled. The alleys are emptier, the darkness thicker. You lie awake and listen for footsteps, for the sound of a fist at the door. You count your coins, knowing they will not last the winter. You wonder, with a dull and distant ache, how much longer any of you can go on. The market does not die all at once. It shrinks, starves, staggers on, kept alive by the few who cannot give it up, and the even fewer who still need what it sells. One day, perhaps, it will vanish entirely, swallowed by fire or law or simple exhaustion. But you suspect that as long as there are hungry people and desperate men, there will always be someone willing to sell and someone willing to buy. And so you wake each morning, brush the dust from your coat, and walk into the thinning crowd, wondering if this will be the day the market finally ends, or the day it begins again in some new, even darker form. There is no ceremony to mark the end, no gathering of rivals to toast your years of service, no grateful families coming to press your hands in thanks. Your life, like your work, winds down not with drama, but with a slow, grinding exhaustion, a series of losses so small that you hardly notice them until one day you are left with almost nothing at all. You still wake before dawn. Old habits linger even as business dies. Your shoes are cracked, your dress faded to the color of dust. You watch yourself in the warped mirror above the basin, an aging face, lines etched by years of bargaining, fear, and survival. You wonder sometimes how much of yourself has been lost to this trade. You have stopped hoping for rescue, for transformation, for some noble ending where your years of suffering are redeemed by one final heroic act. There is only routine now. Get up, prepare, endure, repeat. The market is nearly gone. Where there were once dozens of suppliers, now there are only a handful. You see the same few faces every day, growing more desperate, more brittle. The buyers come rarely and leave quickly. Some are new to the city, lured by the hope of bargains, by rumors of the old market's faded glory. Most are ghosts, flitting in and out of shadow, never staying long enough to know your name. Your work is smaller now, almost petty. Sometimes it is not even the sale of a girl, but arranging for food, shelter, a place for someone to hide for a night. Your house becomes a way station, a stopover for those fleeing worse fates. You do not charge much, not anymore. Your old ledgers lie abandoned in a chest, their pages curling and brittle. You keep your accounts in your head, but even those grow lighter each week. You find yourself thinking more often of the past, of the first sale, the first lost girl, the first enemy made, and the first friend betrayed. The memories are dull and heavy, like stones pulled from the riverbed. You try to tell yourself you did what was necessary, that there was never any real choice. Some days you believe it. Most days You do not. The families that still come to you do so with empty eyes and hopeless voices. They no longer expect rescue, only relief. A few coins, a loaf of bread, the possibility of survival for one more night. You have stopped offering comfort. There is no comfort left to give. The girls who remain under your roof know the rules without being told. They do not ask for stories or hope or even names. They sleep in borrowed beds, rise before the sun, and disappear into the city as soon as they can. You notice the toll in small things, the stiffness in your joints, the thinness of your hair, the way your hands tremble when you count out coins in the dim light. You realize, with a kind of detached wonder, that you are no longer afraid. There is nothing left to fear. No rival can undercut you. No buyer can threaten you. No guard can take from you what you do not have. You have become, at last, invisible even to yourself. Sometimes you catch your reflection and remember the woman you once were, hopeful, angry, determined to survive. You wonder what she would think if she saw you now, shuffling through a life reduced to a handful of errands and a pile of debts. Would she be proud of your endurance or horrified by what you have become? You see the market itself reflected in your decline. The world you helped build is dying, but it is not dying cleanly. There are no lessons, no justice. The pain is spread thin, like ashes after a fire, drifting through the city and settling on everyone who is left. The young girls have stopped coming. The old buyers have vanished. The rituals are gone, the rules meaningless, the language of bargains replaced by the language of simple need. The city changes around you, growing colder, less forgiving. There is talk of new laws, new punishments. Now and then you hear rumors of arrests, of trials, of public hangings meant to scare away what little remains of your trade. You keep your head down, try not to draw attention, try not to remember the faces of those you knew. You tell yourself that as long as you keep moving, keep silent, keep breathing, you will be safe. You are not safe, of course. Safety was always an illusion, a story told to keep yourself from falling apart. What you have now is something simpler: inertia. You wake, you walk, you eat, you sleep. Some days you forget to lock the door, or to wash your face, or to check the coin hidden under the floorboard. It no longer matters. There are moments of clarity, rare but piercing, when you see your life for what it is: a string of compromises, each one costing a little more than the last. You know you have not been good, but neither have you been the worst. You have survived. You have outlasted many. You wonder if that is enough. Now and then, a girl returns, not to thank you, but to pass through on her way to somewhere else. She is older, harder, her eyes both wary and indifferent. She does not blame you, but she does not forgive you either. She might leave a coin, or a scrap of news, or simply a look that lingers a moment too long. You watch her go, feeling both lighter and emptier than before. You no longer expect anything from the city. If there is a reckoning, It will come and go without you. You are no longer important enough to punish, no longer valuable enough to protect. You fade into the gray sameness of the city's poor, a shadow among shadows, carrying with you the weight of all that was traded and lost. Your role, once so central, is now just another ghost in the history of the market, a story barely worth telling, a life measured in the smallest of coins. And yet, you persist. There is always one more day to outlast, one more winter to survive, one more night to endure. There is a time near the end when you find yourself counting days instead of coins. Each dawn arrives not as a promise, but as another stone added to the pile, pressing down on your chest. You tell yourself you are only tired, but the truth is harder. You are waiting, in some secret part of yourself, for the end to arrive, not just for you, but for everything you once touched and twisted and called survival. The city grows crueler as it grows poorer. There are fewer crowds, fewer markets. The new magistrates walk the main streets with tight lips and cold eyes, making a show of order that everyone knows is only skin deep. Every so often, there is a raid. The old alleys are swept, doors broken, the poor dragged out for questioning or punishment. Your house has not been searched, not yet, but you feel the threat like a draft through a cracked window. You keep your head down, answer no questions, and hope your face is too faded for anyone to bother with. You are not without enemies, but they too have faded. The rivals who once circled you like wolves are gone, dead, exiled, disappeared, or simply worn out. The last of the old buyers have grown cautious, fearful of being caught in a final sweep. Some send you desperate notes asking for help. Old debts come due in a world that no longer honors them. You throw these notes into the fire and watch the paper shrivel to ash. Now and then you are reminded of what you have been. A mother spits at your feet as you pass, dragging a starving child behind her. An old supplier, shrunken and drunk, slurs curses at you from a doorway. You hear stories whispered by children, warnings not to talk to you, not to take gifts, or even glance your way. There are no words left for comfort or excuse. You let them hate you if they must. Their anger is a small thing, beside the silence of all those you cannot see, cannot name, cannot save. You carry 1,000 ghosts. Some come to you in dreams, faces twisted by fear or hunger or betrayal. Some come when you are awake, shadows flickering at the corner of your eye. You see the girls you sold, the mothers you lied to, the buyers whose coins bought your bread and your safety. Their voices are rarely loud. It is the quiet that haunts you, the sound of all that went unsaid, all the futures that you traded for one more day, one more meal, one more breath. There is no trial, not in the way stories promise. No mob gathers to demand your punishment. No judge stands above you in a darkened hall, weighing your soul against the ledgers you once kept so carefully. There is only the slow erosion of life, the knowledge that you are less than you were, a shell left behind after the tide has gone out. You wonder sometimes if this is justice or just the way of things. You think of those who profited most, rich men and women whose names are spoken with respect, whose sins are buried in the churchyard under stones too heavy to move. They are not haunted, not pursued. They dine well, sleep soundly, their children safe in warm beds. You understand now that justice is as uneven as hunger and as old as the city itself. Yet there is a reckoning, if only within yourself. You do not believe in saints or redemption, but you have become something like a confessor to your own memory. Each night, you revisit the faces and names, the moments you might have chosen differently. You weigh each one, though the scales never balance. You wonder, as the shadows gather, whether regret is a form of payment or simply another debt you will never repay. You try, sometimes, to talk to the girls who remain. Some have become women now, hardened and quiet, carrying their own burdens. They listen sometimes, but never for long. Your voice is another echo in a house built on echoes. You offer what you can: a warm fire, a safe place to sleep, a meal when you have one to share. But you know this is not enough and never will be. There is one last indignity to your role. You outlast the story. The world moves on. The market becomes a legend. The names are forgotten. You see new faces in the streets, young and hungry and cunning, inventing new ways to survive. They do not know you. They do not care. You are a cautionary tale, a rumor. Some say you died years ago, or that you were caught and hanged. You do not bother to correct them. The city itself changes. New houses rise on old foundations, and even the stink of suffering is washed away by the rain and the seasons. But beneath the stone and mud, the same hunger simmers, waiting for its chance. You know this because you have lived it. You wonder what new shape the market will take when the time is right. You wonder if the ghosts will ever be satisfied. You find yourself talking to the dead, to the girls you sent away, to the parents you disappointed, to the part of yourself that might have been gentler, braver, better. You do not ask forgiveness. You do not expect it. The world is not made for such things. In the quietest moments, you remember the girls as they were, laughing, playing, arguing with their mothers, sulking in corners, hoping for miracles. You remember the brief flashes of joy, of kindness, of stubborn courage. You wonder what might have been if the city had been different, if you had been someone else. The wondering itself is exhausting. At the end of each day, you add another mark to the ledger in your mind. Not coin or names, but hours survived, regrets tallied, stories nearly forgotten. You become, at last, your own witness and judge. The only sentence is to go on living, day after day, carrying the weight of everything you have done and everything you could not prevent. There is no peace, not really, but there is a kind of stillness, a silence that comes when all the bargaining is done and only memory remains. You wait for the end. not with fear, but with a weary acceptance. You know now that some fates are worse than death. Survival, when it is empty, is the harshest reckoning of all. And so, in the last light of evening, you sit in your small, cold room, listening to the city breathe and dreaming, if you can, of one night without ghosts. There is no moment of epiphany, no last minute rescue, no sudden reversal of fate. There is only the city, humming with secrets, breathing in darkness and sighing out despair. You live on in its shadows, not as a villain, not as a savior, not as anyone worth remembering. The truth is far duller. You are just one more story among the thousands the city swallows and forgets. The world outside your window barely notices your existence. The crowds that once surged through the marketplace are gone. The children play quieter games now, mothers watching with more suspicion than hope. Every night you listen to the city settling into its age old patterns, dogs barking, water trickling in the gutters, someone shouting in the distance. Each sound is familiar, meaningless, as if nothing has changed since your own childhood. But everything has changed, and you feel it in your bones. The business that once defined your days has shriveled to a memory. The coins you hoarded are little more than tokens, reminders of debts paid and unpaid, favors given and never repaid. Your hands, once deft with bargains and bribes, are stiff and slow. Your eyes blur when you try to read the faces of the desperate, the hopeful, the doomed. You have become, at last, a witness to your own disappearance. No one needs your services. No one comes seeking advice. The new poor are resourceful in different ways, quicker to hide, more willing to risk everything rather than surrender to the old trade. The old rituals, scrubbing, dressing, bargaining, even the thin comfort of a farewell, have vanished. Hunger remains, but it wears new faces, invents new stories, builds new markets in places you do not know and will never see. You sometimes imagine someone finding you, a lost girl perhaps, or a mother remembering your name in a time of need. But it never happens. Instead, you pass your days in silence, hearing only the echo of old bargains, the hush of footsteps fading down the alley, the distant clatter of a market that no longer belongs to you. In the rare moments when you allow yourself to remember, you see the whole sweep of your life laid out like a ledger with no balance, names and numbers, faces and coins, kindnesses and cruelties, regrets too many to count. You realize, with a kind of cold amusement, that no one will ever tally your rights or your wrongs. You have become a relic, a rumor, a half forgotten warning whispered to children who never quite believed such stories were ever true. The city's suffering continues, as it always has. You know this is the only certainty, that for every end there is a new beginning, for every closed market a new alleyway, for every silenced story another one waiting to be told. You were never the engine of this misery, only a cog, easily replaced, easily discarded. When you die, the city will go on, unchanged and unchanging. Sometimes you wonder if there is a place for forgiveness in such a world. You do not ask it for yourself. You have learned that forgiveness is another form of hunger, another story the city sells to the gullible and the desperate. If there is peace, it is the peace of absence, the quiet that comes when no one remembers your name and no one cares what you did. You think of the girls, the mothers, the buyers, the rivals, all of them vanished or transformed, all of them carried away by the endless tide of want and loss. You think of the choices you made, the ones you never had, the ones you can barely remember. You let the memories wash over you, neither sweet nor bitter, only numb. In the end, your days contract to a pattern as small as your room. Rise, dress, eat if you can, sit by the window, sleep if you are able. The city grows colder, then warm again, then cold once more. Years pass like weeks, weeks like days. You begin to fade from your own thoughts, your presence growing lighter with every morning you manage to survive. The people who live around you now do not know your name. Sometimes they nod to you in the street. Sometimes they look past you as if you are only another shadow in the dusk. You do not mind. There is freedom, in a way, in being invisible. No one expects anything of you. No one demands penance or confession. You are left alone with your ghosts, which is the only company you deserve. One night, you wake from a dreamless sleep and realize you no longer fear anything, not death, not the past, not the judgment of others. The world is quiet. The city outside your window continues its slow, grinding motion. You listen for the cries of the market, but there are none, only the soft sigh of the wind and the memory of footsteps long gone. You lie back, close your eyes, and let yourself disappear, unmissed, unremarked, unremembered. The city endures, the hunger endures, but you, like all the others, are finally free.